Perlmutter.
Well, where do you start with him? You've got a guy who would vote for the Health Care Act in the Senate, a $485 billion cut to Medicare. When you really study it, it's a $485 billion cut to Medicare benefits, because they're gonna pay the doctors the same, they're gonna do everything else, but they're gonna cut Medicare. Seniors, he turned his back on seniors in the state of Colorado, and we can argue, and in the primary, and the libertarians, the more conservative libertarians, and all those folks can say, well, Social Security is a bad thing, or Medicare is a bad thing. Yes, but we made a promise to our seniors, and we let them build their future and plan for their future around the promise of Medicare. And to then vote for over a $400 billion cut to the program that we promised them would be there, that's unconscionable. That's unconscionable. There was a supporter that actually went to a, quote, town hall or constituent service meeting, I think we're calling him now, at Perlmutter's office. And he actually listed that he had a 100% approval rating. And I'm waiting for this document to come in my email. I can't wait to see it. The thing that he was handing out to his constituents is that the Public Service Union, the SEISU, he had a, quote, 100% approval rating by that organization. What about a 100% approval rating to the middle guy? Everybody at the top, if you're a banker, if you're one of these guys at the top, you get a bailout. If you're down to the bottom, you get a handout. But you and I, right here in the middle, we get the bill. And that's one of the things. My son's going to inherit the bill. The bankers or Citibank or whoever it is are going to get a bailout. Those folks down low are going to get the handout. But my son's getting the bill. And lock, step, and barrel. You can look at Ed Perlmutter, and you can find out that he's voted lock, stock, and barrel. Very few times has he ever bucked what Nancy Pelosi wanted him to vote for. His voting record is lock, stock, and barrel in line with Nancy Pelosi. And I don't think that represents the people of Colorado. It doesn't represent my son. It doesn't benefit his future. And that's why I say, you know what? Enough is enough, and we've got to stand up. It was Reagan in and that's the whole thing. I said this about the race. In about 1976, all of the country club Republicans, all of the establishment Republicans, all of the who's who in the Republican Party said Gerald Ford is our guy. And Ronald Reagan stood up and made a speech at the Republican convention in '76, and he said, "Hold on a second, let's talk about conservatism." And that's why I continue to move forward in the race. I'm not worried about the country club Republicans. I'm not worried about their candidate. I'm not worried about who they drafted in the race. Let's talk about conservatism. Let's talk about limited government. Let's talk about the breadth, the depth, the width of government, and how we continue to grow it. Let's talk about how we continue to cause people to become dependent on government rather than empowering them to grow businesses.
I have one more body of questions, if that's all right.
Sure.
So you couched Fraser's involvement with same-sex benefits in fiscal terms, and then you talk about fiscal terms in relation to Perlmutter. But where does social conservatism fit into your viewpoint and your strategy for the election and the significance of the body of values that you're bringing to the race? So there's the same-sex benefits, gay marriage, abortion issues, those sorts of issues. Do you consider that a big difference between you and Ryan Fraser? And do you consider it a big agenda for you coming into the race?
On a fiscal sense, absolutely, it's a huge difference. That at the time of fiscal crisis, whether you're city or state or your federal government, which we are in, it's a huge difference. I'm a fiscal and I'm a social conservative. Now, is that something I wear on my sleeve? Probably not. It's just who I am. It's my values. I happen to have personal beliefs, faith-based beliefs that make me a what people would dub as a social conservative. But that's not necessarily the forefront. For instance, I'll give you an example. There are social conservatives that have told me, out of back your campaign, would you be for a constitutional amendment banning gay marriage? No, because I don't believe that marriage is a constitutional issue. I don't believe it rises to that level. And so perhaps I get hit by both sides on that issue, that I am a social conservative. I personally believe, first of all, I personally believe that the government needs to get out of the phrase marriage. I think we hijacked that phrase marriage, and I would fall more in the Dick Cheney sense that, if a county or city or state wants to issue some type of a license of union, they can do that. But for the most part, most people believe that they get their marriage license and they go to get a faith-based blessing on that marriage. And so that's a whole sidebar of discussion. But I'm a fiscal and social conservative. But I would say that in this election, I'm a fiscal and social conservative. But the fiscal matter of gay marriage that Ryan voted for, I think it's problematic, because again, conservatism is all about limiting, government spending. What are you going to do with the taxpayers' dollars? That someone said over there a second ago, if you want to save the taxpayers' money, stop spending their money. And I think that's where government's got to get to. Stop spending people's money. It's not yours to begin with. But there's politicians, city level, bureaucrats at the national level, all of these people who say, well, we're going to spend less of your money. No, it's not. We're going to spend less government money. No, stop spending our money. But truly, I'm a fiscal and social conservative.
Okay. Abortion will be on the table this election because of the personhood initiative that will be on the ballot presumably next year. So there's the ideological question. Where do you stand ideologically on that? And then there's the political question. How do you negotiate these difficult waters with the primary voters versus the general election voters?
As I said, I'm a faith-based kind of guy. I'm a guy of faith. And my faith tells me that it defines for me that I'm a pro-life kind of guy. However, I think Ronald Reagan is a good example. He's my personal hero, by the way. Reagan's my personal example. Reagan's a pro-life guy. Reagan was an absolute 100% pro-life guy. But Reagan, some people call it the Pareto principle. That's what it's called in business. And then, of course, it was Reagan's definition of conservatism. But listen, if you can agree with me 80% of the time, then we'll figure out these other 20% of issues. And so there are going to be people who say, well, I'm not a pro-life guy. I'm totally 100% whatever. Well, I'm not going to compromise for political expediency my personal faith-based, personal heartfelt belief that life begins at conception. I am so grateful that...
So is that a yes or no on the initiative?
On the personhood initiative? Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you were going to continue?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I'm so grateful that my son in Rwanda, who we have no clue who his parents were, we have no clue who his father, we don't really know anything except he was abandoned at 11 o'clock at night. I'm so glad that my son, as horrible it may sound, I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to actually take my son and become his father. And so I'm a pro-life guy, and yes.
So the last is a softball. What's your webpage, and what do people, how do people get to know more about you?
JimmyLakeyForCongress.com is our political website. JimmyLakeyForCongress.com.
Lakey.
Lakey. As I said, the nonprofit stuff, depending on where you go with this, Ari, is the nonprofit stuff is riverspromise.com. I think I gave you that one earlier. If they go to JimmyLakey.com, they'll see everything that we're about. They have 3 options.
Okay.
And so you can decide where that goes. But the political stuff, if that's where you go, is JimmyLakeyForCongress.com.
All right. Well, thanks.